Hi everyone, welcome to week 6. I hope that the capstone project went well for you last week. Looking at the grades, it seems like everybody did pretty well. But if you have any questions, if you missed anything, there were a couple times where a couple students had something weird had happened where it might have changed like the line under some data a different color. So for example, if the line was red, but for some reason just in one place the line was black and everything else was red, that kind of weird stuff will throw the grader off. So if you missed anything, but you think you did it right, you think the grader maybe read it wrong, or there might be something that you just can't see in the worksheet, reach out to me and let me know, and I'd be happy to help you figure out what's going on. Okay, let's talk about week 6. So week 6, we go into module 4, which is the first intermediate module in Excel. So this is kind of like the mid-grade level of challenge in working with Excel. So we've passed the introductory level, which would be the beginners. Now we're to the middle level. In this module, you're doing a lot of different things. It focuses a lot on financial functions, data tables, and amortization schedules. And I know those things might sound intimidating, but they're really not bad. And with this module, I have one more quick guide that I put together. After module 4, I didn't put any quick guides together because there wasn't a lot that I could capture other than you just learning where to go, and it wasn't anything that I ever felt anybody would read. So this is the last one, and in here it just focuses on the most important things in this module. For example, you're going to learn about cell names. So up until this point, cell names had a reference. It had a column, letter, and a row number. This module, we give the cells specific names so that as you're building longer, more complicated functions, that you can easily read them. And now I don't want you to think that the formulas and functions you're doing this module are hard. As long as you follow the instructions, you'll be okay. It's just that you can have really long ones that are hard to read, and so that's why we give them specific names. So for example, in this module, you're learning about what we call an amortization schedule. It's a little loan calculator, and I did one when I was a student in this program in Excel, and I actually saved it. So you could save the homework that you do for this module, and you can plug in numbers. Say you want to go buy a car or buy a house, you can plug that information in the amortization schedule you're going to build and put the interest rate in, and it'll tell you, what the payments and interest and different things like that are. But to make it easier, we give specific cells names in this module. And so that's what I want to make sure that you focus on. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. We are going to learn about the payment function. So if you take Sarah's financial math class, she's going to talk about the payment function. And payment function is the rate, the number of periods, and the amount of the loan. There's a formula that you would do in a math class. In Excel, it's in a function, so you have to tell it what the rate is, the number of periods in the loan, and then the loan amount, and it'll calculate the payment for you automatically. The key to this is depending on the type of loan, if we're talking about a loan that has a 1 monthly payment, you're going to have to divide the rate by 12. So what you have to do is take the rate and divide it by 12 months for Excel to calculate the rate right. So this is what your function would be. You would have the rate divided by 12. That's the first part of the function. That's the interest rate. Then you'd put a comma. Then the next part would be the number of payments. Well, you'd have 1 monthly payment. You have to make sure you put a 12 in there. So you have to tell it 12 months times the term, and that gives you the number of payments. And then the last part is the loan amount, which is just the amount of the loan. Okay. The other thing is in Excel with a payment function, if you don't put a minus sign before the payment, before the word payment, so you'd say equals and then minus payment, it gives you a negative number because technically payment is money going out. But in Excel, we don't want it to show as a negative. We want it to show as a positive. So you have to remember back to math, 2 negatives make a positive, correct? So we have to put a minus in front of the word or the payment function to get it to give you a positive number. And so that's what this just talks about, how to do that. There's other financial functions we talk about a little bit in this module. There's the future value, there's the payment one, and then there's the present value, and it tells you what are the pieces of those functions. And then this module also talks about protecting and hiding worksheets and workbooks. And then there's a little section on how do you check formula errors. And then the last part is, this is just some help on the homework, is that here's an example of the function that should be in project 1. So this is what it's looking for, that specific cell. And this is just to help you out because this is where students get stuck. What I want you to understand is in this payment function, you're going to see the word rate. So we gave a specific cell the name rate rather than using the cell reference of C6. So if you try and plug in C6 here, and the term, I can't remember for the project one what the term cell reference is, but if you have, you know, C6 or B6 or different cell references that are not names, the grader's going to mark you wrong. What it's looking for is rate is a name of a cell, term is the name of a cell, and loan amount is the name of the cell. So make sure you give your cells the correct names. And it's in the instructions. So the key to the instructions is to make sure where it says you're going to give the cell a name, you're going to give it a name, and then when you use it in the formula, you should see that name of that cell in the formula or function. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. The other cool thing about Excel is that there is a back view. We call this the show and print formulas view, where you do the control grave mark, or it's also the little squiggly tilde. You can look at your formulas. So let me just show you what I'm talking about just quickly. Okay, so this is one of your projects, all completed. Okay, up here you've given these cells specific names. You're going to do this. So if I click on 327,000, I come up here to the left. Normally I would have D5 as the name of the cell, but we give it a specific name. And the underscore, Excel takes care of that for you. You don't have to create the underscore. The way you give it the names in the instructions, it's going to take care of that for you. If I click this list, it's going to show you all the different names of different cells. So if we come over here to 3,937, well, we call that the monthly payment name, which happens to be the text in the cell next to it, because monthly payment is indicating what's in this particular cell. And so you're going to see that. So what you do is when you're working up in the formula, if I were to take this out and I were to just type rate, so this is the beginning of the formula, it's going to give me two options. Actually, it's going to give me three. It's going to give me a little grid that says rate, then it's going to give me the function rate, and then another function called int rate, which is, or interest rate, which we aren't going to use. But this, I just want to make sure you understand the difference between a cell name and a cell function. So if you type rate in, if you get this little grid with two blue squares, that's the name of the cell. And so you see how it's highlighted this cell, because we gave that cell that name and we are using it as part of that function. So anytime you're working in the formula bar and you're clicking, type a name in. So for example, the instructions say rate, you type in rate and it's going to give you this, and then you double click that, and then you have to do the rest of the math, of course, but that is, that little grid that you get lets you know that that's a name of a cell. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. Here's the 12-month thing again. So we divide the rate by 12 months, and then term, we have to multiply the term. So the term is 10, okay, 10 years. So 10 times 12 months, because there's 12 months in a year. And then loan amount's the last one, so that loan amount comes from this 327 cell reference, and that's what I want to make sure you understand, is that those are specific. These right here, the ones in color, those are cell names that you are going to give those specific cells in your assignment. And then the other thing I want to show you quickly, if I do the control key, hold that down, and then I do the accent mark or the grave mark, or the, we used to call it the tilde key on your keyboard. Whoop, let's try that again. Oh, I've got to get out of that formula. Hold on. I've got to get out. I can't be in the formula bar to do this. So I put my cursor in my workbook. I do control tilde, and then this gives you the back view of all your different functions and formulas that are built in. And so you can see this is a table reference, which you'll learn how to do in this module, but you'll see the formula up here. It's just another way for you to verify your formulas in a different view, and it gives you the whole worksheet all of your formulas so you can easily troubleshoot them without having to click on each one and then trying to remember what you had in the previous one, especially if you're filling down. So hold control down, hit the Graves key or the tilde key or the accent mark, whatever you want to call it. That's going to toggle you back and forth between the different views. Okay, so let's go back. So that's out there if you need to reference that. Make sure you again follow the instructions. If it says put in the name of a cell, use the name of the cell. If it says put in a number, put the number in. Sometimes they will do both, and so they will have you do both, and there's sometimes where they will have you use a number or a specific cell reference like C6 without the name. And so just make sure you read the instructions thoroughly to make sure you don't miss anything. And again, if you get stuck, just reach out to me. Okay, as usual, you have your SAM training, SAM exam, the projects, and then this week for your eBasket, you're going to do what we call a down payment calculator. So very similar to the project you did. You're going to download a start file, which is I put out in Canvas for you. You're going to save it as calculator, that's the name, and then you're going to create a calculator, a down payment calculator for buying a house. And you're going to use the future value. So you got to find the house. Go out to Zillow, pick a house that you would love to buy, your dream house or a starter house or whatever you want. Find out how much it costs, what Zillow says it's worth. You're going to put that into your worksheet. You're going to calculate the future value, create a 2-input data table. This module talks about data tables, and I walk through it in the project. And then you're going to add a title and make it look nice, and then you are going to upload your Excel file. And so what I've put out here for you are just a couple of examples of what the loan calculator looks like when you're done. And bear with me for a moment while I get that open. Okay, here is an example of what a student put together. So I give you a worksheet, a starting, let me show you what that looks like. Right. If I go back, your start file's right here. So you're going to download this file. This time you don't start from scratch. You start with the file I give you, you open it, and then when you open it, you're going to see that you have these headers, or this is our calculator, so the headers to those particular numbers. So current value of the house, down payment, monthly savings, rate of return, years to save. You've got to decide what the value of the house is. You need to calculate the 15% down payment. You can do a basic formula for that one. How much you want to save in savings, your rate of return. So what are the rates for housing for a mortgage right now? How many years to save, and then the future value. And you're going to use the future value function. So I left this in here for you so you can see how to do it. And then you're going to build this data table, and you're going to learn about data tables in this particular module. And then you're going to populate this table. So you're going to look at years and monthly savings. And so it's going to automatically populate this for you based on what's in your calculator. And then of course you have to build these headings. So you're going to have to build years to save, decide how many years you're going to save, and then decide how much the different options for your monthly savings. This looks like they did every $50 increment. You could do every $100 increment. It's whatever you want to do. And then you're going to run the data table, and then it's going to populate all this stuff in yellow for you, and that's all you got to do. So don't stress about it. It's a little different than what we've done before, but just give it your good effort and give it a try. But I do at least want to see, you should have a table here, some information that populated, and then I want to see at least your future value function show up. And this one you also have to put a minus sign in front of it to get it to come back with a positive number. Okay, so that's what's happening this week. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. Let me get back to here and have the example for you. This is your start file, and that's it. And so if you get stuck, use the Project 1 video I've put out there for you, right here, of me walking through SAM. That's going to help you understand when you get to the eBasket, you're going to do it just like we do in this SAM project, okay? Because in this project I walk you through the same thing. I give you some overview of it, and then you're essentially replicating that one section of the assignment. Okay, that's all I have for you. So I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you again soon. If you have any questions,